Welcome, everybody, to a special episode of the Benzinga Crypto Show. I am your host, producer Aaron. Aaron, whatever you guys like to call me. Joined with me today is our lovely co-host, Catherine Ross. How are we doing today, Catherine?
We're doing great, especially given the fact that we have amazing guests today.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that our guests are upcoming stars that everyone is talking about in the crypto space. They are often referred to as Ethereum Killer, the term that they don't really like and don't really agree with, but we'll let them address that a little bit later. So we are welcome to have Anatoly Yakovenko and Raj Gokal, co-founders and CEO and COO respectively of Solana Labs. Welcome, guys.
I'll pull them on. What's up, guys? How's it going?
Hey, hello. Good. How are you?
Doing great. Doing well as well.
I'm just going to start with the question that we have because it's a huge list and we don't have a lot of time. And the first question is about the story behind the story, right? Can you speak a little bit about what's the story behind Solana creation? How did you come up with the idea, when and why, and how did you guys pull this off?
You want me to go first, Raj?
Yeah, go for
it. All right. I spent most of my career as an engineer at Qualcomm, which is a company that builds mobile phones, and worked in operating systems, optimizations, like just making stuff faster for over a decade there. And, everyone was aware of crypto as an engineer. It's not like you weren't aware of it, but everyone was skeptical for different reasons. Me, it was because I never thought it was going to be able to support a large audience. And 2017 came around and you had this big boom in crypto, but also the scalability problem became at the forefront of what everyone was talking about in crypto at the time. And I had, as the legend goes, 2 coffees and a beer, and I had this couldn't sleep until 4 a.m, and I had this realization that there's a way to use a similar puzzle to proof of work, but to encode different physical constant, time itself, like the passage of time. And once I had a source of time that really was kind of like, a big boom went off in my head, because wireless protocols use time as kind of one of the first optimization techniques, classically called time division multiple access. It's the foundation of wireless networks. It's how your cellular networks can handle thousands and millions of simultaneous users, is because of first time division multiple access and a bunch of other stuff later. But that's really kind of the core part of how you optimize decentralized network with multiple, with many senders of information. So that's really what started it. We were lucky in both of our networks, Raj and mine, to pull in some amazing people to join us. And over about 2.5 years, we built Solana and launched it, and kind of had runaway success in terms of like our thesis, adoption, amount of devs that started building on the network, the projects that are launching, and kind of the both caliber and impact of this project.
Raj, so what's your side of the story?
Yeah, I mean, my background was in digital health tech. I started, a medical device company, spent a bunch of time trying to rebuild healthcare. I think a lot of people that I love and respect in the crypto industry spent time around that, 2012 to 2016 kind of window, looking to rebuild healthcare from the ground up. So one of the people that I worked with is an old friend of Anatoly's, and is the one that introduced me to him. And when I left and was thinking about starting a new company, he said, "You got to talk to Anatoly." He left Dropbox. He's got this crazy idea, and I knew Anatoly was one of the best engineers in my network. And so I figured, let me listen. I was into crypto a little bit, investing and just paying attention to engineers who were really excited about it. But I think when Anatoly started describing the idea of, proof of history and the architecture for what would become Solana, it was pretty clear to me that was the biggest swing I could be a part of. And so I just wanted to help Anatoly however I could in the first year to get the money and the team together. And I mean, I think that the clear differentiator for me, like what sets Solana apart, is that we started with engineers who've built distributed systems for billions of people already. And I think in 2017, 2018, that was not the type of team that was going after the scaling problem. So that was the only thing that gave me the confidence to back Anatoly and help him. And obviously, I'm very happy that I did.
No, that's great. So, moving along, could you guys go into, Solana's business model and how you guys, came to that?
I mean, like we're a layer one protocol, right? It's an open source project first and foremost. There's an underlying token there, but really the goal of the project is to build this open source community around the protocol and to have the community itself kind of drive and create value. Because the thing that we're building is you can think of it almost like a public good, just like Ethereum or Bitcoin.
I do have a question about the business side as well. What does your typical day look like? So you're running a startup. Can I call it a startup yet? Or it's a company or a corporation?
It's a startup. Yeah, sure.
So what does a day look like for you, Anatoly, and for you, Raj? What do you do? Who do you talk to? Is it difficult to run such a company?
So
I would say first of all, it's very different every month, right? It's been rapidly growing. Everything's been exploding. The number of developers, the quantity of inbound from, large companies, the audiences across all channels, and the whole industry as a whole has been exploding. So, the network launched over a year ago, and I'd say every month since then, it's been a very different job description for me and Anatoly and most people in the team, which is what's exciting.
Anatoly, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a traditional business because our goal isn't like we're really trying to get information out to educate people that this thing exists, that it's awesome, that devs should go start building it and giving them the tools to do so. And that's really a process of education, not so much like get revenue, cut deals kind of thing, which is, I think, quite different than traditional startups, traditional businesses.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was great background on the business side of it. To get more into the tech side here. So according to the official site, Solana can process 50,000 transactions per second. How did you guys achieve speed like that? And are you planning to speed it up?
So the way the network works is that transactions and votes, or I can say that votes themselves are transactions, and those nodes that are participating in consensus that actually have impact on censorship resistance, they take advantage of all the optimizations that go into increasing the capacity of the network in terms of TPS. So that thing of TPS, right, that like important number isn't just a number for applications to compete with Visa. It's really the foundational core part of the network. Like, what are we building? We're building a censorship resistant messaging layer. It means that we need to maximize the capacity for consensus, for nodes to vote, for the number of independent parties that participate in this network. And the way the network is designed is that number increases as hardware improves. As NVIDIA, as Intel, as they ship better hardware every 2 years, that number goes up. And it's variable based on the current physical deployment of the validators. They can they can adjust their hardware on demand. If there's more demand for use cases that need more throughput, they can literally go buy that hardware and deploy it like in hours, right? So that number, right, or that scalability isn't like a fixed point, and it's effectively always going up. But it's not, like folks in the space focus on TPS as like a simple thing. For us, for the core of what we're doing, TPS is the foundational core of censorship resistance. It's this idea that once you have this network, anybody that's participating in it or anybody in the world becomes fully super connected, that there's no intermediaries between anyone in the world.
So for someone who doesn't necessarily know what TPS is or is unfamiliar with what that could be, could you, explain it more so in like, easier terms for them to kind of understand?
The coolest thing about crypto, forget about like layer ones, proof of work, any of that stuff. The cool thing about crypto is humans, like ordinary people with cryptography, that people that are able to sign messages, right, that signature guarantees mathematically that they're the only ones that did it. And this is a really powerful tool. It's what controls value transfer in Bitcoin or Ethereum or smart contracts in DeFi applications. The number of humans in the world, right, is 7 billion. The TPS means that the higher the TPS number, the more humans we can super connect and have them send these cryptographic messages to each other. That's really what it means. So the bigger that number, the more people can participate in the network simultaneously, and the more interconnected the network becomes, the cheaper it is to do so.
Definitely want that number to be high.
Looking forward to it. So I do have also a technical question. Anatoly, I've been reading your Medium post from 2018, and I know that you've mentioned proof of history, right? So we know that Bitcoin runs on proof of work. Ethereum is trying to introduce proof of stake, and actually tells that it's going to run a little bit faster and it's going to be all okay, and fees are going to be lower. But I want to quote you. Solana leverages proof of history and several other breakthrough innovations to allow the network to scale at the rate of Moore's law. For someone who is not as technical as you, could you please explain what that means, what proof of history, and why you decided to go with that protocol in the first place?
Yeah, so that was like that eureka moment, that idea that I had that really kicked off Solana. It's a mathematical way to encode the passage of time. You know, if you look at Einstein's equations, they work forwards and backwards in time. There's no mathematical specification that says time moves in one direction. This is kind of a interesting way to do so, using cryptography to generate this kind of arrow of time. And it's necessary because you need a way to reduce the communication overhead in these systems for them to scale to a large number of participants. The reason why time is so important in wireless networks is because the same problem exists in radio. If you remember your physics classes, electromagnetic waves, they interfere in the air, right? So if two radio towers transmit at the same time or the same frequency, you get noise because of the interference. So the first thing that anyone's ever done with radio is they gave each tower a clock. So each tower alternates by time, right? Second one, tower A goes, second two, tower B goes, and so forth. Cellular networks, like your phone, works exactly the same way. There's a tower, there's 1,000 phones associated with that tower. They alternate by time. And the clocks are so synchronized in modern day networks that they can do this, I think roughly every 20 milliseconds, if not faster, 20 or 5 milliseconds, right? So that requires extremely high precision clock. The problem in blockchain is that we don't have these kinds of clocks. We don't have high precision clocks because that requires some central authority like Google's atomic clocks for their database, or the GPS clocks that the folks use to synchronize. That requires us to trust somebody. And in a blockchain and totally open systems, there's no participants that we can trust. Proof of history solves this arrow of time problem without introducing any additional trust assumptions. It works as a trustless clock. It's this objectively measurable universal way to measure time. And once I had that was kind of like my eureka moment, that all these same optimizations that I spent a decade working on at Qualcomm are all applicable now in blockchain. So we can actually build a high performance network that scales to, 10 billion people.
Are you aware of any other platforms using proof of history?
No, we're still the only one as far as I know.
Do you expect anyone else to introduce that?
Yeah, there's projects starting to fork Solana, which is, like everything's open source. Like from our perspective, that's fine, because like it's really tough to take like something like Ethereum or Tezos and to like borrow ideas and move them rapidly from one code base to another, simply because these things are complicated as operating systems or databases. Linux is open source. It took decades for the same ideas that were built in Linux to appear in Windows and even in another open source operating system like BSD Unix, just simply because of the complexity involved in anything this foundational to developers.
I know, I have a personal question. I know that this is an open source kind of ecosystem, but how does it make you feel when somebody tries to fork it? Like, are you proud?
Awesome.
Or are you just a little bit?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100% proud. Like, the more eyes, the better. The more people using the software, the better. Ultimately, like, everyone that is touching the code is helping it get better and move us along faster.
Nice.
You probably can learn from each other as well.
Yeah, the network effects from Linux are kind of immeasurable, right? Like the idea that anybody in the world could use Linux as an operating system and start a project. I literally worked at Qualcomm, and every other operating system that was proprietary, while the Linux folks would code at home on the weekends. And, slowly but surely, and then all of a sudden, Linux became the de facto OS for mobile. You can't really fight an open source community.
That's fair.
Yeah, that's fair. So moving along on the tech side, What are the biggest challenges you are currently facing for adoption?
Adoption, I think, is really bottlenecked, but just our ability to educate people, to tell them that this exists. Blockchains are interesting. It's the future of finance. Like it's just, we're how many people in our community are doing this full time? Like that's really the bottleneck.
I think that I do have the last technical question. It's the one from our team, because everybody from Benzinga are very excited that we're talking to you today. So, will the future be about consolidation in 5 years, and how many all DeFi chains will really be needed?
So to kind of go back to what I said, as long as you have people that are so interested in what you're doing that they're willing to spend their weekends, nights, right, like coding on this, those open source projects are just never going to go away. Like they're never going to die. As long as there's still somebody that's like, this is cool, I like the vision, I'm going to like go and have fun with it and like build something. So that in that sense, like the multi-chain world is here to stay because all of this code is open source. The problems are so hard that there's multiple interesting solutions to them, and that excites engineers that will always bring the next generation of folks to go build on them. On the practical side of it, like, are we going to have a single chain that does 80% of the world's transactions? Maybe, but that may not be even the most valuable chain, right? Like Bitcoin may still be around while still doing its 7 transactions per second. Like, yeah, these are like kind of open-ended questions that it's too early to tell right now. I tend to think that, cheapest, fastest message bus wins, but that's because I spent my career in wireless protocols.
Can we address a little bit the Ethereum Killer sort of comparison that is going on in media and over every single headline that we're looking at?
Yeah.
I know that I've asked.
I mean, are the Lakers the Warriors killers? Sure. Like, right? Like, there's, we're all competitors, which is great. Like, competition, is what the driving force for excellence. Like the optimizations that we're doing, the folks at the Ethereum Foundation and building Ethereum are 100% aware of them. And likewise, the really cool solutions to like data availability when nodes switch shards that the Ethereum folks are doing, we're also aware of those. And those all become useful things as we try to build stuff. And again, to go back to this like earlier point, there is no way to kill like an open source community. Like I was messing around with Linux, building it from scratch in the 90s as a teenager while Microsoft was trying to kill it. And then later like IBM, like SCO and a bunch of other shitty companies tried to sue Linux out of existence. But because those folks kept, having fun with it and building it, it's now like the main operating system in the world. So it would be a waste of our time to be an Ethereum killer. It's more interesting for us to compete, right? To build better products. And that really is what drives everyone to kind of grow the market, to grow the number of humans using cryptography in the world.
And if you look at solana.com/ecosystem, right, it's a little bit, you compare Ethereum ecosystem to Solana ecosystem, right? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, a lot of the projects jumping into Solana are more really are the ones that can't run anywhere else. So like Serum is a central limit order book. Even in something like Binance Smart Chain, which makes trade-offs for decentralization to speed up EVM, you can't run a central limit order book on them because of EVM. Like we've designed something that when the TPS numbers goes up, censorship resistance goes up. That means decentralization goes up. It's fundamental to everything that we're doing. So the performance that we're providing doesn't sacrifice decentralization, but opens up like use cases that are just impossible anywhere else. So that's really like the folks coming into the space are looking at Solana, and that's what they're building. So we're pretty excited about that it's a unique ecosystem with unique devs that want to do this the way that they want to do it versus like copy paste some Ethereum code from one EVM chain to another.
Rash, you are the CEO, right?
COO.
I'm COO.
COO, yeah.
We're brothers.
Yeah.
We're like, I'm the technical side. He's the human side of it.
So can you tell us a little bit about, from the operations standpoint, what it's like to run a company like that? I imagine there are a lot of developers. They are not the easiest people to talk to sometimes, right? I mean, they are creative, but they're creative in their own way. So can you tell us a little bit about challenges that you have to face?
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, it changes month to month. a year ago, the conversation was always very theoretical and technical. So there was a lot of education to developers about what might happen when, the network gets to 500 nodes or 1,000 nodes. For example, that's the type of conversation we don't really have to have anymore because the network's there, right? But these days, and, over time, it was sort of, is this optimized for, DeFi? Is it useful for everything? I think, again, we're in a world today where we don't really have to have that conversation because you already have use cases across the board that are all, built on Solana and thriving. So the job changes a lot, but I think in general, the goal for us is to just always find the hardest to win use cases and teams, and just, constantly be building a community of relentless entrepreneurs that really, really care about, not just, building and tinkering, but scaling the technology to billions of people. And so everything that we do, in operations is about finding and supporting those people. So, that's what the hackathons are. It's not about attracting entrepreneurs. It's about giving them a destination to all go compete and focus their efforts on one, date to launch against, forcing them to, go out and acquire users and show not just that they can build a good code base, but, that they can acquire users and build an online community and attract a following. And, at the end of the day, I think for every 100 teams that come into the blockchain space, probably 80 of them are just chasing money, and 15 of them are good, but not great. And, and out of the 5 that are left, maybe 1 or 2 are capable of scaling a product to 1 billion users. So when we find a team like that, my job is to just get everything out of their way, connect them with people in the community, connect them with investors, connect them with technical resources, and bring them grant funding or even funding from Solana Capital to get them off the ground. That's the big focus right now. I think we're also switching focus a lot toward just getting 1 billion people to understand what self-custody, looks like and what it means to have your own key pair, which is a huge challenge as well. And I think that's where it gets exciting, but also scary because we're trying to grow the pie for everyone. We think it's important for every network. Everybody who cares about crypto should care about 1 billion people or more having their own key pair and understanding what that means for themselves. Just the same way that we taught, billions of people to use a QWERTY keyboard. It's a challenge, but once you're there, we're all connected in a completely different way.
How many people work at Solana right now?
So there's Solana Foundation, and there's Solana Labs, and there's Solana Capital. Yeah. Across all of those organizations, there's still less than 60 people, which is, we like it that way. I think everyone at all of those orgs enjoys working in a small team where there's a lot of, self-direction. And the only way that you can kind of achieve what has been achieved so far in the Solana ecosystem with that few people is by having a vibrant community that's pitching in. There's even just things down to, keeping up to date on new projects and new developments. There's I think there's at least 8 Twitter accounts with many thousands of followers that are effectively like citizen journalists. Normally, if this was like one large enterprise where everything was dependent on a centralized entity to push things forward, there would be an entire PR department. There would be, a team of people who are just running marketing campaigns and doing newsletters to keep, interested enthusiasts up to date on what's happening in the ecosystem. All that stuff is happening, organically. So when people are part of labs or foundation, that's a very high leverage position to be in because you're only focusing on the hardest problems and the most important work.
Asking for future generations and somebody who is probably considering to jump from any other industry to blockchain, especially developers, right? So how would the developers enter the blockchain system, for instance, to be able to work for Solana in the future? What should they learn? What programming language?
I remember being an engineer and kind of being scared to leave my job and do a startup or jump into really unfamiliar territory. But one thing I realized that as an engineer, you're the most you're in the best position, because you can always get a job. There's always demand for software engineers. This is one of the most privileged times, in history to be an engineer. So just go for it. And easy way to do this is join a hackathon, join a team, go build a product, see if you can push yourself to build something in 2 weeks that has to go live and has to have something interesting for users to do. Those are challenges that a lot of folks in big companies don't often face because you have these 6-month cycles of long sprints that, never seem to end. So I would kind of advise people in their engineering careers to take the plunge, because it's a massive learning experience. You won't regret it.
And we are moving towards the last part of our interview is future plans from both. I know that you've touched a little bit about that, but maybe to conclude, so what kind of plans you have technically and from the business side as well?
Like everything we're doing is really focusing in this idea of maximizing censorship resistance. It's like a lot to unpack there. Why does anybody care about this? Well, if you have this network that is truly censorship resistant, then you have no intermediaries. You have value creators that are connected together, right? The people that are building amazing products to get users, plus the people that are trying to synthesize information and create these like markets and things like that. There's nobody in between them. There's no additional fees beyond the cost of hardware. So like those are our plans, right? It's just to keep iterating, keep helping the community grow, like keep helping the censorship resistant piece grow, keep getting more people to self-custody. Those are like, big enough problems for us.
Yeah. Fair enough. Rajan mentioned that you like the team the way it is right now, right? Because you're able to make decisions much faster than it would be in a corporation like Binance, for instance. But what are your future plans? Are you looking to grow the team? Would you like to hire someone who would do newsletters to spread the word out there?
No, I mean, like I said, I think the community is taking on a lot of work to grow the adoption of the network. It's been, I mean, we're learning about and when I say we, I mean Solana Labs, that's the company that just raised money from Andreessen Horowitz. It's a company that's one participant in the ecosystem that's building, tooling for developers and new products and protocols like Metaplex to push use cases forward. That the team that works at Solana Labs is learning about, most of the new developments on the Solana network just the same way that everyone else is. And I can't think of a way to get ahead of that in any meaningful way. It's just happening. Right? It's just exploding. So when we think about, who's a good fit for Solana Labs, it's those people that I described, relentless entrepreneurs. It's really just, founders that they're going to be the ones that push, payments forward and ticketing and, all the different components of DeFi that we're already seeing play out, but, kind of building ahead of the curve over the next 5-10 years to get most, of the financial activity, trading activity in the world happening on chain. Those types of big thinkers and executors are the types of people that that's basically who I have conversations with all day, every day. And being part of Solana Labs is just one path, right? I mean, all of these people have a path to starting their own projects. And honestly, most folks like that are better suited to actually start their own projects. So I've been lucky. I've just been able to spend time with folks like that and help them get off the ground, which is getting easier and easier because, the community is also helping.
Well, thank you so much for your time and for speaking to us. I am personally looking forward to watch how you guys grow and support you in any way and be a part of the community, because I've seen a lot of Twitter accounts that are actually doing a lot of supporting to you guys. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you saw them too.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. And right before you guys go, what I always ask before everyone leaves the show is just to, give our audience, let them know how they can reach you, if they have any questions or concerns, where they can find you for more updates about Solana Labs and, any upcoming projects and so on.
Just go to the Solana Twitter or solana.com. You can follow us, add us, send us, whatever messages you want. Like we're happy to talk to anybody and everyone. And, self-custody your keys. Go write down that seed somewhere safe and start using the next generation of decentralized finance.
Wow, what a great line to finish, right? Conversation. Okay, thank you so much.
All right, guys, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Yeah.